Welcome to the Top 10 Horror Books of All Time video. I know what you're thinking. This feels somehow familiar. It feels like we've been here before. But it is not just a feeling. You really have gone insane. Either that or it's just 2025 and it's time to redo the list. I have read more horror, I have reviewed more horror, I have fallen in love with more horror, and I feel way more confident in this list this time than I did the last time around. And if you have by chance seen the last video, stick around. This is vastly different than the last one. Some things are still here. Some things have changed position. Some things are brand new. It's going to be a good time. So, let's start the video off, like always, with an honorable mention. I do want to bring up Frankenstein. I just read this very recently, and of the two monolithic classic books that you have out there, those being Dracula and Frankenstein, I would have to say that the better of the two books is Frankenstein, surprisingly. As much as I loved Dracula, as much as I loved that mood and the atmosphere that you really get to live in for that book, I think Frankenstein's probably just the better book all around as far as just being a book is concerned. The message and what it had to say as a story and the way she said it was just far more impressive, I think, than what Bram Stoker created with Dracula. Not that that's not impressive. Honorable mention out of the way. Now let's move into the actual list, the top 10 list. What really matters? What everybody's here for? Let's be honest. Now, I will say this is a list of horror books that I think are wonderful, and it is a list of what I deem the best. What I think is the best is not always what I think is the scariest. So sometimes a book that you think is more frightening will be lower on the list than one that is barely frightening at all. But it is my metric as to greatness. Whatever that means, it's not really relevant. It's not important. I'm not important. But I will do my best to explain to you what you get from the book, where it falls on the scariness scale and on the greatness scale, and why it landed where it landed. So we're going to start at number 10. 10 being The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. Now this is a book of short stories. All of these short stories contain a book within this book called The King in Yellow. It is more a document, more a screenplay for an actual play, stage production. And anyone in these stories that reads The King in Yellow goes insane. And this is a series of short stories, some of which are actually weird and creepy and frightening, some of which aren't, some of which are almost err on the side of romance literature, and pretty much everything in between. There's one that takes place in the near future for them, which was like the 1920s for us. But when this book was written, that was the future. That was almost like a science fiction short story. But they are all just wonderfully delicious. The prose is dense and atmospheric. It is very much so of the time of the 1800s. It reads like that, and it just kind of wraps you up and envelops you in that feeling of being in that time period, all while adding this layer of mystery and intrigue and just unease of not knowing what's going to happen, and then seeing somebody get their hands on the King in Yellow, and you know what happens to people when they read that. It is so good. It's amazing. It's really, it's a precursor to H.P. Lovecraft. Actually, I think H.P. Lovecraft wrote in the world of The King in Yellow, dropped some of his short stories in this world. I think, if I'm not mistaken. You could fact check me on that one. But it absolutely was an influence on H.P. Lovecraft and inspired him to do some of the great work that man did. Next up at number 9, we're going to do The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This is another book that I just read. Is it on here due to recency bias? Maybe. I don't know. I fucking loved it. I can tell you that right now. Will it last? Will it stand the test of time? I'm not entirely sure. But I know that when I was putting this list together, I just kept coming back to it. And I really wanted it on the list. Now, in the year 2013, a girl finds her great-grandfather's diaries from the early 1900s. And he was a preacher, and he is going to tell the tale of a man that came into his church and wanted to confess his story. This was a Native American man. So we start and end the book in the more modern day with the girl's story, and everything in between is the diaries of the preacher. And those diaries jump back and forth between the preacher and the man, the Native American, confessing his story. So we have 3 timelines kind of bounce in and out of them, and they are so fabulously well done. Phenomenal. This is essentially a period piece of the early 1900s about Native Americans, the Christians, and then there's going to be a vampire tucked neatly into this story. How does it fit? How does it work? Who is the moral and or righteous? Who is not? It is an extremely well-told story. The narrative is well-paced. The narrative is well-built and structured. And then the moral tale that you are going to be told within this story is so multi-layered and complex. It is complicated in the moral sense, as it will test your morals as to what is right, what is wrong, and what justifies what. It's brilliant. It's truly brilliant. Next up at number 8, we're going with The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. This is the monolith that it is for a reason, and it is not just because this movie is a powerhouse and is genuinely amazing. The book is just as amazing as the movie. It is frightening. It is deep. It is that narrative on the family whose daughter has been possessed by a demon, and we're going to bring in the Catholic priest, and he's going to do the exorcism. But the priest isn't as faithful as he could be. He's also dabbling in science, and he's really got a scientific lean and bend to his mind, but he's also in and out of it's another one that's a little bit complicated, and some of the scenes, some of the things that are going to happen in this book are downright awful. I will say this is one of the more frightening books on this list, but it doesn't make it as high because I was a little underwhelmed by the writing and the actual prose and narrative style of the book. That is not to say that it's bad. It is very good. It's just, if it would have been better, this probably would be in the top half of the list. Easy, for sure. But it was just a little bit more stunted than some of the other things that are going to come up later that are just truly next level, truly fabulous. So that's what kind of holds this one back from being truly top of the list. But it is just as wonderful as you would expect the book The Exorcist to be. Next up at number 7, we have to go with Junji Ito and Uzumaki. This has had quite a fall from the last video. It was a lot higher on the last one, and I struggled with this one a lot on this list. I can't see this list without Uzumaki. I don't know why it fell this time around. I think I was just so in love with what this book is and what it did the last time I made this video, because it is a manga, and it is a manga about this town, and this town has been infected with spirals, and then you're following a teenage girl and her boyfriend as they try to navigate this town and everything that's happening in the town to the people as it devolves into almost madness. And the story is about spirals, but the story itself is spiraling the entire way. Now, it is not actually that frightening. It is just much more of a fascinating narrative. The story ultimately spirals into this weird, twisted, cosmic horror of an ending that leaves you damn near without hope. Next up at number 6, The Ring by Koji Suzuki. This is, once again, the book the movie was based off of, but the book, once again, is just so much better than the source material. The movie itself kind of leans into a little bit more traditional horror, a little bit more of your jump scare kind of stuff. The book, on the other hand, is just much more of a detective story about this journalist who finds out about this videotape, that if you watch the videotape in 7 days, you will die. And then he goes on this whole mission to investigate and figure out what this is and why this is and how this thing works. And it's just this slow, creeping feeling, getting up under your skin, the unease, the dread, the anticipation of where the horror of the book is going, also the anticipation of the answers that the journalist is going to be collecting and unearthing. Then there are side characters in this book that are extremely complicated morally, and you kind of don't like them, but then even the morals of the characters will be flip-flopped throughout the book, making you question who the characters are, where you land morally as to what that person has done and how you should feel about them. It is just so layered and so complicated and so complex for what it is doing in this quite short amount of time. Then the ending of this book is one of the greatest endings to just about anything. I almost wish there wasn't sequels to this book, just so it could have dropped where this drops you and walked away. That would have been perfect, because it is one of the greatest endings ever. It is kind of an answer, kind of a solution, kind of a rug pull, while kind of being a cliffhanger. And it does it all at the same time within the span of a few pages, and then just drops you and walks away. It was truly brilliant. One of the greatest endings ever. And I know that's probably a divisive thing to say, because I could see this ending but not being for everybody. But oh my God, did I love it. Like a lot. Next up at number 5, we're going to have the absolute master, the legend himself, H.P. Lovecraft. But H.P. Lovecraft is a short story writer. So how do you pick? Well, as a wise man once said, I can't just throw the whole book down on the table and say the entirety of his collection. I have to pick a story. And that story is Color Out of Space. It is a cosmic horror. Of course, that's a silly thing to say about Lovecraft. It is the story of a meteorite that falls from the sky and crash lands on a man's property. It radiates a strange light, and everything that comes within the vicinity of this meteorite is changed and warped, and it just starts to become just a little bit different. It will then spiral into some of the craziest, most twisted body horror you're going to read. It's also going to be psychological. It gets inside your body. It gets inside your mind. It gets under your skin. Then it's going to be told by H.P. Lovecraft in all of his wonderful prose. It's archaic. It's dense. It's beautiful. It will transport you straight into the time and the period and the vibe. It is so good. It's kind of hard to explain. It is my favorite H.P. Lovecraft story so far, hands down. It's wonderful. If you have not read The Color Out of Space, it's like 20-something pages. It's short, it's sweet, it's easy. You can knock it out in an afternoon, a couple of hours, easy, if that. Next up at number 4 is going to be Jack Ketchum and The Girl Next Door. And this book kind of falls into the category of that book. I don't know if I'll ever read this book again. That's how upsetting this book was. If we're going into the bend of most upsetting, genuinely frightening, like so affecting, I don't even know how to explain it. That's this one. This might take first place or second in that category, because it is just so ungodly awful what this book is. This is the story of 2 girls that are then placed under the care of their aunt. Their aunt has a couple of children of her own. They're folded into that family, and they are then systematically abused for the rest of the book by the aunt. The aunt will then include other children from around the block in the neighboring homes. She's going to foster a group gang-like mentality, manipulate and twist the minds of the children in the neighborhood, all while abusing these children, all while encouraging the other children to abuse these children. And the spiral as it goes through the book is probably one of the most upsetting things I've ever read. The spiral of abuse and the things that are going to happen, the things that are going to be done in this book are atrocious. It should come with a laundry list of trigger warnings, which you can Google that on your own. I won't mention them here, but it is hard to read, to say the least. So if there is a line that you won't cross as to what you are capable of reading when it comes to a horror book, and it's not like gruesome, I wouldn't call it extreme horror in the sense that it's going overboard and trying to explain what's happening. Just the fact that some of the things that are happening in this book are happening makes it one of the hardest things that you're going to read, and one of the most horrific and one of the most affecting. Jack Ketchum, The Girl Next Door. Be warned. Next up at number 3, House of Leaves. This is the point where half of the audience leaves the video. I tell you, this is a very divisive book. You either love it or you hate it. If you love it, you're like me and you're going to put it right at the top of the list. If you hate it, you're probably going to unsubscribe from the channel because you're disappointed that it's even on the list. I get it. It's that kind of a book. I don't care. I loved it. It is genuinely amazing. This is the story of a house that is strange. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Rooms will appear, closets will appear, entire sections appear out of nowhere. Then the book is going to be told through the lens of a man finds a manuscript that was being written by another man who never was able to finish his book. This man's going to try to finish that book for him. That book is about a film. That film is made by a man named Davidson who was documenting his family moving into this home. It sounds kind of confusing and complicated, and that's because it kind of is. It's part found footage film by the Davidson man, it's part documentary by the old man, and it's part ramblings of a madman, which is kind of the guy who's attempting to finish this book in the end, what just goes off the rails pretty much at every step of the way. Then the book itself is kind of a puzzle with footnotes upon footnotes that lead you sometimes nowhere, sometimes to the back of the book with just a simple definition, sometimes on entire tangents that will take you so far off course before you finally make it back to where you were in the book and the main proper narrative. You could skip the footnotes, but I would say don't. They add so much to the story. They add so much to the feeling. Then there are a lot of stories out there that are about a book or a document or a manuscript that makes you go insane. Not many of them are that story, while also giving you the actual book, the actual manuscript that is driving people insane, and doing its best to try and recreate that feeling as you're reading paragraphs right side up, upside down, left to right, right to left, never letting you really get your feet on solid ground, keeping you always feeling like you're a little bit in quicksand while trying to read the book, while trying to navigate the footnotes, while trying to put it all together, while sometimes dropping you in the middle of a sentence just to go to somebody else's perspective for a couple of pages, then come back to the last person's perspective, picking up in that sentence where it left off. You will be jumping back and forth and flipping pages, just trying to keep everything straight in your mind. It is so brilliantly told, brilliantly structured. It is amazing in every conceivable way. Pretentious? No, I say no, thank you. I think it's brilliant. Although, if you think it's pretentious, I get it, because it's also kind of that. Next up, at number 2, is Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. And this is a coming-of-age story about 2 boys in a small town, and in that town, the carnival comes. And it is an evil carnival, and they will be tested, and they will be the only ones kind of that see it and kind of understand it at first, and they're the only ones that are pushing back and fighting back against the evil that has come to their town. Eventually, one of the boys' fathers, who is a janitor, will get in, and he's going to help them out. It is just one of the greatest stories I have ever read. It is so beautifully told. The prose, oh my God, the prose of Ray Bradbury is literally beyond just about anything that I have ever read. He is one of my favorite authors ever. He is one of my favorite prose authors ever. And this is my favorite book that he has ever written. It is that good. It's not necessarily scary. This is the one where I was hinting at the beginning of the video. It's not scary. It's not really creepy. It's almost like it was written for boys of the age that are in the book, although I don't think the boys of the age in this book would appreciate the writing in the way that a full-grown adult can. But you'll come back to it later in life and you'll be like, oh, this is amazing. Just the descriptions of, say, the scene where the actual carnival comes to town and it sets up and the tent's going up and oh my gosh, the writing is literally on a level most other authors can only dream of. Ray Bradbury was a master. This book is his masterpiece, at least of the ones I've read. I have not read his entire catalog, so if there is a better one, let me know. But I find this one to be just my favorite. And last, but not least, and the number one greatest horror book of all time, another divisive one, I think, is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Now, Pet Sematary is the story of an Indian burial ground that is behind the actual pet cemetery. If you bury something inside of this Indian burial ground, it comes back to life, but it comes back changed. Then it's going to be the story of a family that lives next. They move in, they're new to town, and they hear about this place, and their cat dies. So they bury it there, and it comes back, but it comes back different. The family will then befall a tragedy, and the dad has to make a decision what he's going to do faced with this tragedy. And he already knows what happens in this burial ground, but he will wrestle with this idea in a way that's going to put you inside the mind of a grieving man, inside the mind of a grieving father, and it's going to make you live in his head for a shocking amount of time while he wrestles with what he knows is wrong, while he justifies decisions that he knows he shouldn't make, and while it just pushes forward further and further and deeper into his guilt, into his grief, into the trauma that he is currently just enveloped in. It is so upsetting from the perspective of a parent. I don't know what it would be like to read this as a non-parent, but I tell you what, if you are a parent and you read Pet Sematary and this isn't the most upsetting and affecting thing you've ever read, I don't know what to say for you. Maybe you have no soul at that point, but it's, if you're looking for like jump scares and oh my gosh, crazy, creepy zombies that are coming out and fighting and killing and stuff, that section of this book is quite short. It's actually like 20, 30, 40 pages, I forget. But it is a shockingly short amount of time at the end of this book where it's actually scary, and then it's kind of over and the book is done. But that's not what's upsetting about this book. What's upsetting about this book is the grief of loss and what your mind does and what lengths will people go to when they are so locked into grief. And just, there are scenes in this book that still haunt me to this day. It is that upsetting and hard to read. Like I said, I could see somebody reading this looking for that scary part of the book, and they get that little blip at the end and they're like, this was super lackluster. What are people going on and on about? But I don't care. The rest of it is so haunting and hurts my soul so much. Number one, all day, every day. Anyway, everybody, that is my top 10 horror books of all time. What is your list? Or at the very least, which one's your favorite? And as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.